Just like you, Nicole, like you were good friends.
I am not.
It's we have a really interesting group of people. Our membership is like really close to 2,000, and most of the Wednesdays we meet here, and sometimes we skip over because the schedules are not working out for some speakers. And our events actually really bring people from all different parts of the world. Our members come from about 140 countries. Can you believe that? So just about 2,000 members and come from 140 countries. Countries that I'm surprised, like entrepreneurship is like alive and kicking in there. So that's really good. Well, thanks for coming here, and we do just to get you guys a good idea about what the group is comprised of. And so can you guys quickly go through and tell which country you represent? You just have to speak your country name. We can start with you.
France.
France.
Japan.
Japan.
India.
India.
Miami.
Miami. Yeah, please.
I grew up here, so.
Okay, that's fine.
Australia.
Australia.
Ukraine.
Ukraine.
US.
Uzbekistan.
Ethiopia.
Quebec?
Ethiopia.
Ethiopia. Okay.
Taiwan.
Taiwan.
France.
France.
US.
US.
China and Korea.
Okay, wonderful. So you guys saw, I love to see participation from countries which is not typically represented. Ethiopia. There's a lot of entrepreneurship happening in all parts of the world. So welcome. Great to have you guys here. So my effort, what I do is I look at what's hot and what's not in the market, and in my network, and I reach out to people and then pull in speakers that are actually going to inspire our group of members. And so today we have a really interesting person here, a really interesting entrepreneur, Claus, and he has a very interesting product. I'm not going to do justice talking about that product because I'm not a hardware guy, but I definitely wanted to talk more about it. And if you guys can welcome, please. Yeah, so,
Awesome.
yeah.
I'm Claus. Definitely thanks for having me. I come from the far off land of Wisconsin, which for those of you who are from the US probably that doesn't make any sense. It's a state in the center northern part of the country, very cold, very much infatuated with cheese and football, and American football, not soccer. Anyway, very happy to be here, very happy to talk about the company that I lead. I'm CEO and co-founder of a company called SnowShoe. And I guess we can just jump into the slides?
Yeah, totally.
Awesome.
Totally.
Let me just get this going. So this is actually a version of a presentation that we gave when we went through a technology accelerator this summer. It's called the Disney Accelerator, powered by Techstars. Who's heard of the Walt Disney Company? Mickey Mouse, Only one person raised their hand. Seriously, who's heard of the Walt Disney Company? Who's not raising their hand? Walt Disney Company is a $40 billion company. They chose 10 startups, invested in each of those individual companies, and brought us down to their corporate campus for 3 months this summer. Culminated in a demo day in front of a whole bunch of investors and advisors and startup people and whatnot. And this is part of that presentation. So I'll run through these slides, and then what I'd love to do is just have a question and answer about the company, about anything you guys happen to be interested in. So again, I'm Claus Moberg. I'm the CEO of SnowShoe. Our lives are full of so many things, but our days are increasingly consumed by just one thing. This device is a transformative technology that's impacting everything we do and everything we own. Companies that choose to ignore this trend do so at their own peril, because we all know what happens when market leaders ignore transformative technologies. It's not pretty. SnowShoe is building a world where our things can unlock full digital experiences. Our kids' toys can connect to their tablets. Our most prized possessions can connect to our phones. With a simple touch, we turn everyday things into magical keys. Our technology works in your phone's browser or in a native app. It doesn't matter. And there's no antennas and no batteries. It's just a piece of plastic. And it works on every smartphone and tablet worldwide. This is SnowShoe.
Yeah.
It works by attaching a simple piece of plastic to any physical object. To a human, it looks like any other piece of plastic. But when you touch this piece of plastic to the screen of a smartphone, the phone detects touch events as if you were touching it with fingertips. Those touch events are in a unique configuration on every SnowShoe-powered thing, so that your phone can uniquely identify which thing is touching it. And the entire power of the internet can therefore be brought to bear on this thing. When you give this kind of power to an object, the object sells for more. And it can increase in value over time. What do I mean by that? Disney sells this Woody figurine. Who's seen Toy Story? The movie. Now people raise their hand. Disney sells this Woody figurine for $1.62 as part of an 8-piece set. They also sell this Woody figurine for $12.99. They're both fun toys, but the one on the right lets you play as Woody in a console video game called Disney Infinity, Xbox and PlayStation and stuff like that. That toy, the one that unlocks digital content, sells for a lot more. But it doesn't stop there. Normally, the thing you buy starts to decrease in value the minute you open the package or drive it off the lot. If you've ever bought a new car, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But if the thing you buy unlocks the internet, or the power of the internet, and can be updated over the internet, can link to digital assets that change over time through essentially being pointed to an IP address, it's now unlocking evergreen content that can change over time, and therefore can increase the value of that thing over time. If SnowShoe is the technology that links these physical objects to that content, SnowShoe creates a ton of value via the value of the physical objects that we power. So going back to Woody, right? Games like that, Disney Infinity, Activision Skylanders, have you guys heard of these? So these are console games that you buy for an Xbox or a PlayStation. They come, with a DVD just like every other Xbox game. But in the box, there's also an NFC-powered base station. So a piece of plastic that has a whole bunch of radios built into it. You plug that base station into the USB port on your console, and then the way you choose your character is you actually go back to the toy store and you buy a figurine. And you put that figurine on that base station, and all of a sudden that character teleports into the game. So if you buy the Woody figurine, put it on the base station, that character is now your playable character in the game. It means that to play all of the content for Disney Infinity, an $80 game, you have to spend $350 on figurines. Pretty lucrative. And the two leading titles in this space, Disney Infinity and Activision Skylanders, have done about $3 billion in revenue in just 3 years. Kids fucking love this stuff. There are only about 300 million consoles that have been sold in the world that these games work with. Xboxes, PlayStations, etc. At the same time, there are over 2 billion smartphones and tablets that are already in consumers' hands worldwide. SnowShoe can unlock the exact same user experience for those devices. The result is a huge market opportunity that we're chasing. Excuse the bad keynote animations. But in order to do that, we need to be able to make a lot of these things. Right now, I am making every single one of these things that my company makes on a farm of 3D printers in the wilds of Wisconsin, a somewhat foreign country. We can make about 5,000 stamps a month. Nowhere close enough. Disney Infinity sells 50 million figurines a year. Obviously, those two numbers are nowhere close to the same ballpark, which is a problem. Luckily, we're in the process of engineering a manufacturing process. This is our slow manufacturing process right now, but we're about to launch our first relationship with a contract manufacturer in China, and by the end of this quarter, we'll be making about 100,000 stamps a month on our first scale manufacturing. Not 3D printing, different technology, but still very cool, and still allows us to make individually unique little pieces of plastic that can be identified by your smartphone. So coming back to Woody, you might think toys and games are the only use case that this technology is good for. But actually, our first two biggest clients are Red Bull and News Corp. Red Bull hands out these little pieces of plastic with a Red Bull sticker on them at concerts. And if you touch them to redbull.com during the concert, it automatically triggers an iTunes download of the lead act's most recent single. Red Bull is sponsoring the concert because they want you to go to redbull.com, period. That's why they're doing it. They've never actually been able to measure how many of the people at the concert go to redbull.com as a result of the concert before. So they don't even know what the ROI on that advertising spend is, let alone had a direct mechanism that was actually functional in terms of getting the concert attendees to go to their website. The first 3 times we tried this, we were able to get 92% of concert attendees to go to redbull.com during the show because they were going to get a free iTunes download. Who wouldn't do that? Just by handing these out and tracking how often they were going to be used. So not only did we drive ridiculous conversion percentage, but we also were able to track that conversion percentage for the first time. Very valuable. So SnowShoe is a developer-facing platform. We don't make any of the end-user-facing experiences. We don't make games. I don't make that Woody figurine. I didn't build the Red Bull app. We make an API and a whole bunch of little pieces of hardware that can be attached to pretty much any physical object. And then companies like Red Bull, well, Red Bull's developer, Disney, really anybody can build that experience into their app or into their website. And we have about 3,000 developers building on the platform today. We've distributed about 12,000 stamps so far, again, mostly limited by our horrible current 3D printing manufacturing process. And we're about to scale that dramatically as we bring this new line on in China. So again, SnowShoe drives digital conversions across pretty much any use case, from marketing to e-commerce to in-store, brick and mortar store engagement, loyalty programs, payments, Bitcoin wallets. We are the link between a physical object and any valuable digital asset. Core team, my co-founder Jamie sits on the business side. I'm a laughably technical CEO. I don't write code anymore, but I tell the developers what to write. Sheridan's done almost all of our hardware prototyping. We now actually have a team of 7. Mickey doesn't work for us, but he's posed for the picture. And we've raised about this is going to be recorded. So officially, as of today, I can announce that we've raised about $2.5 million, but if you pay attention to your favorite news sites over the next few weeks, you'll hear another announcement. So Foundry Group, 500 Startups, BAM Ventures, Queensbridge. Who's heard of the rapper Nas? That's his venture fund. He invested in SnowShoe. Ludlow Ventures out of Detroit, Techstars, and Disney. And so, like I said, this is Woody. If you guys have seen the movie, you remember Andy's little kid. This toy was worth more to him than it was worth to anybody else in the world, right? It was his Woody. It wasn't worth more to him because it was somehow different from any other Woody doll. It was worth more to him because of the content, the stories, the memories that he had with it, right? SnowShoe gives all of those things digital value. We give unique digital identity to any physical object. So we think that's incredibly valuable across a whole bunch of different use cases, and it's something we're very excited to bring to market. So I'm Klaus, this is SnowShoe. I'd love to open up to questions and just happy to answer anything that might come to mind.
What was the application? I saw News Corp Australia. What was the application?
News Corp has been using the stamps. You don't know this, but the News Corp Australia website, one of their papers, I'm not sure which one, is stampable. And if you are a subscriber to that newspaper, you get a stamp. You can touch it, and it's exclusive content that's only available to subscribers. It's still in beta though, so they haven't launched it.
In this paper?
It's on the paper's website. So they distribute the physical product, the stamp,
With the paper.
if you have a subscription. Right. So, yeah.
So related on that, why don't use just a QR code?
It's a great question. How many people have a QR code scanning app on their phone? That's actually really interesting. In the US, about 4% of people have a QR code scanning app on their phone that they know how to use. Internationally, obviously, especially in certain countries, it's much more popular. But the big difference is that because this is communicating through touch events, and you can detect touch events through HTML5, we can make websites stampable. We don't need access to the camera or any other native functionality on the phone. And it works on any device that's out there. So QR codes work on pretty much every mobile device that has a camera, which is great, but especially in the US, people just will not use them. Either they don't know how or they don't care to. Our technology, you don't have to convince somebody to download a native app that can access the camera. You can just need to get them to type in a URL, and all of a sudden you can have them stamp it.
Conversion is just easier.
Conversions, so Red Bull, yeah, going back to that where we had a 92% conversion percentage for Red Bull, they've done the same thing with QR codes, and I think they had about a 5% conversion. Giving away a free song. Like, who wouldn't scan a QR code to get a free fucking download? Like, yeah, it's just that much more of a barrier to conversion.
You take us to the use case scenario after the first usage.
Yeah.
So we use it once for the Red Bull experience, right?
Yep.
How do you use that again?
This is just a piece of plastic. There's no like local storage on it, right? When you touch this to a stampable page or app, that front-end application is essentially making a server call to our API, and our API is just returning a unique identifier for that stamp. The developer can literally make that unique identifier link to pretty much anything at any time, right? So Red Bull didn't do this, but they could, and a lot of other clients are doing things where you take a stamp, you hand out an event today, it's an iTunes download. If you come back next week, one of the thousands of stamps that's out there gives you a free trip to India. If you come back next month, you touch it, and all of a sudden it's an exclusive video that has never been shown publicly before. So a good example of this is the Disney Fan Club. Is something I'm sure we're all members of. D23.com. If you really like Mickey, I recommend signing up. But they hold a big conference every year in Orlando for their members. And they handed out stamps to every attendee of that fan club conference. And if you touch them to the Disney Fan Club website, it unlocks videos that have never been shown publicly before from the Disney archive. So a video of Walt Disney walking around the 1964 World's Fair. maybe not terribly persuasive to us, but if you are in the Disney fan club, that is crack. And so the only way to see this video is to take your very exclusive special membership stamp and touch it to that web page, and all of a sudden you get these really cool videos that other people can't get, and they change those videos out over time, right? Because again, each stamp is just pointing to an individual endpoint. It's like an IP address. You can point it to whatever you want. So in that implementation, we are changing out those videos on a monthly basis. We're seeing 10% of the people who have a stamp come back on a weekly basis to check to see if there's a new video posted. So again, like in terms of driving that fan base to engage with that page, there's really nothing that converts at a higher percentage. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks.
What were some of the challenges that you faced, and what are the challenges that you might face in the future?
That's a, God, where do I start? So we've been doing this company for almost 5 years. And we started the company, I was a PhD student at the University of Wisconsin, researching an entirely unrelated field, meteorology, the weather, like literally nothing, like entirely unrelated. We started the company to do something entirely different. We were selling loyalty apps to grocery stores. So if you've ever been to Safeway or grocery store and you had a card that you had to swipe every time, we were making smartphone apps that did the same thing, so you didn't have to carry that damn card. And so you could have dynamic like merchandising and couponing and stuff like that in the store. You can't interact with the card, right? And we actually invented this technology to solve a very specific problem we were facing with that business, which is that every grocery store we signed up, the grocery stores would pay us to white label these apps for them. So it was the Safeway app or whatever. We didn't sign work with Safeway, it's just an example that everyone around here knows. Tesco. But every store had a different point of sale system. And in order to do digital couponing, we had to basically integrate with those different cash registers. And the only thing that was common amongst all of the grocery stores that we signed up is that their cash registers were different and older than we were. Like literally. And so we couldn't really build a scalable coupon authentication platform that would integrate with each of these individual stores, because it would cost us more to write the one-off code for that old-ass point-of-sale system than we were actually earning to sell the app. And so we needed a way to authenticate coupon redemptions that would reside entirely outside the point-of-sale system, basically a way to prove that a smartphone owner with the app open was standing like at the conveyor belt, and if they had a coupon for Cheetos, that Cheetos were actually on the conveyor belt and they were buying them. And we realized we could make these and give them, well, they didn't look like this at the time. They were made out of aluminum, milled out of a solid block of aluminum. They were very cool, very expensive. But we gave one of these to the cashier. You would display your coupon. If Cheetos were on the conveyor belt, she would stamp the screen to authenticate redemption of the coupon, and we get all the data we needed from the front end, from the user's connection. Technology worked really well to solve that problem. We then realized that we hated selling things to grocery stores. We should have had a clue that they hadn't replaced their point of sale systems in 35 years, so maybe they're not great customers of technology in general. But we invented this technology, and we basically realized that we should just pivot to pursue the technology that we invented that was our biggest differentiator. And that was about 2.5 years ago. We got lucky and somehow managed to get into Techstars Boulder. I really have no clue how or what they saw, because I wouldn't have invested in me at the time. Came out of Techstars Boulder focusing on secure user authentication. So has anyone ever heard of an RSA token? Like 3 people. This is like if you're very wealthy, which I'm not, your bank will give you this little keychain that you carry around. And whenever you want to log into your bank account, you press a button on the keychain and it gives you a one-time code that's correlated with a list on the server. And you not only have to type in your password and your username, you also have to type in this one-time code. It basically proves that you have this keychain with you. It's proving that you have possession of this physical object as a way of authenticating your identity. We said, well, hey, we can just prove that somebody has this with them if they just touch it to the phone screen, right? Way easier. But a big mistake that we made was not realizing that when you're a startup, like that's a great use case for our technology. How do you actually sell it? Well, we only made a physical factor of authentication. We only made a thing that could prove the one thing. We didn't make the whole system that had the passwords and usernames. We just made the physical factor. We're like, okay, well, let's go sell that to the people who make the user authentication system. So let's go sell it to RSA, or let's go sell it to EMC, or whoever else is doing security. It turns out that the sales cycle, like the time from like first contact to the time they actually buy something from you in that space is like 4 years. And they will never buy something from you if you don't have like 15 PhD cryptographers on your staff that present at Black Hat every year, and that like, you know, and that's not me. I'm a meteorologist, I look at clouds. So like, it was a great use case. I still think our technology could be used for it, but like our team wasn't well structured to do it, and the sales cycle was gonna be 4 years, and we had like 3 months of funding. So we had to find something else pretty quick. And we sort of found the toy and game space. We got, again, extremely lucky in that, have you guys heard of Product Hunt? Yeah. So Product Hunt is, everyone here has heard of Reddit, right? Product Hunt is like Reddit for product announcements. It's extremely popular here in San Francisco. Like it's basically a daily upvoted leaderboard of new shit that's been launched, right? And it was just taking off this time last year. And so February of last year, we pivoted into like talking about ourselves with this toy and games use case that I just went through. And we put it on Product Hunt, and we ended up being the #1 most upvoted product for the entire month of February. I still have no clue how the fuck that happened, but it did. That got a whole bunch of people downloading our software and requesting dev kits, and the result of that was Disney came knocking. We definitely were not planning on doing another accelerator. We'd already gone through Techstars Boulder. We definitely weren't planning on doing another Techstars program, and the Disney accelerator is actually powered by it. It's a Techstars program, it's just vertically focused around Disney. But looking at all of our options and trying to raise a funding round, it was essentially the only thing we could point to other than the number of developers building on our platform that was like a semblance of traction in that toy and game vertical. It was like, hey, Disney wants to invest in us. That was the impetus that we assembled this $2.5 million funding round around last summer, and it ended up being a fantastic experience. So, I mean, tons of mistakes, tons of twists and turns in the road. We've managed to survive a ton of stuff. We're now on a pretty aggressive growth curve, but definitely haven't always been. In terms of the answer to the second part of your question, in terms of like future challenges, I mean, we need to earn money someday. We've basically been running this as a charity thus far. We give shit away. So like, please build something on our platform. It'd be nice to get paid for that at some point. The biggest challenge we have right now is scaling the manufacturing process. So today, as I mentioned during the presentation, right now, all of these are built on little 3D printers. That doesn't scale. If anyone's ever used a like a hobbyist level 3D printer, you know how infuriating that is. Imagine trying to build like 100,000 things on that. It's just a horrible process. So we're working with a bunch of engineering consultants and a bunch of really smart, really expensive people to figure out how to make a lot of these really quickly. And we hope to have that line set up in the next 3 months. And once we have the hardware available, I think we'll be in a pretty good space, but I'm sure some other challenge will come up then.
So you hope now you're building it for some renewable material? Or?
Yeah, so it's made out of it's made out of ABS plastic. It's the same plastic they use for Legos, and almost all, like 95% of our feedstock is recycled, and it's all recyclable.
So when you're saying just now that, for example, because I know that in China actually use quite a lot for banks, like they give you a special code
Yeah.
and you have to log into the website. Because this is physical object, but obviously somebody much easier to copy.
Yeah.
How do you make it so secure?
So the security is really interesting. It turns out the touch screen on this phone is a really precise instrument, really precise sensor. Like, you know, I mean, you can click on a box that's about 20 pixels by 20 pixels, right? That's the minimum clickable object size. And there's 1,300 by 900 or something like that pixels on this phone. Excuse me. So our manufacturing processes, any of the things we've looked at, 3D printing, the things we're about to do in China, they actually, the device can observe the stamp more precisely than we can make it. So I can't actually make two of the same stamp. And so from a security standpoint, that actually works kind of like a salt on a password. We make a stamp, we observe what we made, that becomes the key identifier in our lookup table for the authentication API. And then even if you have the file that we use to make that stamp and you send it back into the 3D printer, back into the process that we're using in Asia, your chances of making the same stamp twice that will reliably be identified as that stamp are statistically very insignificant. Does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of like a fingerprints.
Yeah, right. So now that doesn't mean that somebody with millions of dollars to spend on an engineering exercise couldn't engineer something to spoof a stamp. They certainly could, but that's true. I mean, the RSA encryption key has a backdoor. Anything that's out there isn't 100% secure, right? And we think the ease of use for this is so much higher than the ease of use for any of the other things in that space that it's still probably competitive and has a nice space in the market, but needs to be proven out still.
How much does it cost?
Today, tomorrow, next month, next year.
Like with the Chinese manufacturers?
Chinese manufacturers, they'll be, we don't have final estimates yet, or final full bill of sale, but it's somewhere in the range of 10 to 25 cents each for the capacitively active portion of the stamp, the thing that actually creates the touch events.
And then what's the size restriction?
It depends on how many unique ones you want to be able to make. So we are literally moving internal features of the stamp, physical features of the stamp around to make those touch events. The more X and Y area we have on the bottom of the stamp, the more unique patterns we can make, the larger the namespace becomes for that app, right? So if you make it half this size, it's a third power law. If you make it half this size, you have about 5,000 unique addresses. Something this size has about 6 million unique addresses. Something twice this size can encode about 65 bits of information. Does that make sense? So it totally depends on what your use case is. If you, going back to the Woody example, if you don't want to know it's my Woody versus your Woody, and each one has a different thing on the bottom, you just want to know it's Woody versus Buzz Lightyear, you only need 30 functional addresses, you can make the bottom of it about half this size and still have plenty of namespace for security and all that kind of stuff. If you want to uniquely identify every single credit card in the United States, something about the size of a credit card works really well, luckily. Unfortunately, right now we actually can't go as thin as a credit card. There's a lot of physics that explains why, but we actually need about 3 millimeters thickness. But apart from that, anything that is 3 millimeters thick by some surface area could have a stamped object built into it. Does that make sense?
Is there like a kit, if you're a tech company who wants to test your devices, how do you get one?
How do you get one? Go to snow.sh or snowshoestamp.com, or until I give the 3 away that I brought, come find me before the end of this event. If you go to our website, you can order a kit for free. Snow.sh or snowshoestamp.com. And that you can order them free for about another 10 days. So go ahead and do that. In 10 days, we're launching a new version of the website, announcing our next funding round and a whole bunch of other stuff, and they'll be $25 each for a small dev kit, and then a normal dev kit, which is 100 stamps, is $500.
So let's say I go to your website and I order it.
Yeah.
What do I do with it?
Are you a developer?
No.
Not much today. In 10 days.
So it's for developers mostly?
Yeah, so we don't build any of the end user facing apps or web pages that use the technology.
Okay.
We're like Twilio or SendGrid or AWS. We're an API that developers build into their platform.
Okay.
I don't know anything about toys. I would be a terrible game designer. I would, you don't want me doing any of that.
Okay, so each company who wants to promote their company would put the programming in it.
So for the Red Bull use case, we have a lot of agencies that use us and build experiences. We have a bunch of toy companies and video game companies that are interested in those use cases. Like I said, for the security applications, we thought we could go to RSA and they would build the application, but it turns out that's not a great market for us to go after as a startup.
Okay, got it.
But yeah. Any questions?
So I assume, coming out of Techstars and focusing on security, you had one presentation style. I'm curious, how did going to Disney affect your presentation style? Was that part of, I'm sure every company probably didn't actually come away from that experience with something like the way you did, but I'm curious about how that actually changed.
Yeah, so I never uttered.
It's a perfect fit with what you're doing.
I never uttered the word magic in a presentation prior to going to Disney. It still kind of makes me cringe a little bit. But,
what's the percentage of people who get funded?
by Disney? I think Disney accepted about 1.5% of all applicants. To the
Oh my
program.
God, that's very low.
Yeah, it was very low. We had already done Techstars though, so we kind of had an unfair advantage in that we knew at least the Techstars side. We didn't know anybody at Disney, so don't give us too much credit.
Oh, you got lucky then, huh?
We got lucky. That's a good way to put it. But yeah, I mean, so Disney, it was actually a really interesting experience. You know, we had gone through Techstars, we had gone through the standard Techstars demo day process, which is very rigorous. Like it's, you know, they will focus on putting on a good show. That's sort of the main sales point for the accelerator is how good their demo day is. It was nothing in comparison to Disney. I mean, Disney's bread and butter is putting on a show, right? That's all they do. They tell stories. And so, I mean, the amount of coaching, the amount of practice we had to do, we had, I think, 8 live rehearsals for the Disney demo day, like full run-through rehearsals. I think we had 2 for Techstars. You know, the amount of focus on the actual story we were telling, not just like a standard startup pitch deck where you show a couple hockey stick graphs and you do like, but actually focusing on telling a story. Like, and I'm terrible at this kind of stuff. So obviously, none of this story was my brainchild, and that's why I'm still using the same deck, because it was way better than anything I could come up with on my own. But it was a really interesting process. It's a good point. Yeah.
So knowing what you know now, go back in time and give yourself some advice.
So I'm not so naive as to say like don't focus on security or maybe grocery stores are a terrible customer, because I don't think that I ever, like, if you had told me day one that like the grocery store thing was never going to work, I probably just wouldn't have started the company. I'd still be an atmospheric scientist like looking at clouds, and that'd be really boring. But the biggest piece of, so there's probably 2 takeaways that I have from like the whole startup experience thus far over like 4 years. One is it's a fucking roller coaster ride, and everything is amplified to you as a founder. So the really good times feel 10 times better than they actually are. Like any rational outside observer looking at what you're doing, they're gonna be like, dude, it's not, your shit is not that great. Like, get over yourself. The really bad times, like the times when you're almost out of money, or your shit doesn't work, or your 3D printers catch on fire, or you get sued, or whatever, like those downtimes feel easily 10 times worse than they actually are, right? Like the world's not ending, it's just a company. Like your investment, unless, for the most part, if you go out of business, your investors will be like, that one didn't work, okay, I'll invest in the next one, right? Like, and if that's not the case with your investor, don't take their money, because like, don't take your mom's money if she needs that money to survive or whatever. But like, for the most part, like if your company fails, it's not the end of the world. But for you as a founder, while the things are going down, it feels horrible. The only thing that's similar to it is I have a 2.5-year-old son, and it's about the same level of like involvement there. Like if he skins his knee, it's like the worst thing ever, right? Or if another kid, heaven forbid, in the park pushes him over, like, right? But if he, you know, the first day when he took his first steps, like, I don't care if you have kids, your kid's first steps were not as good as my son's first steps, right? Like, it's the only thing I've ever seen that's similar to it and so what you have to learn, and the main takeaway I have is like, essentially whatever emotions you have about your company, you need to moderate back towards the mean. So if you're feeling really, really good, like you need to check yourself and you're not that good. If you're feeling really, really bad, the world's not ending. Come back up a little bit. You know, sort of want to be in that medium space at all times. The other really big takeaway that I've had is the value of transparency. The first 2 or 3 years we were doing this, if anyone, even investors, asked me how things were going, oh, we're killing it, we're doing awesome, man, everything's up and to the right, you know, $1 million next month, no matter what, like, we're just, you know, hottest thing ever. That is really damaging. And it really was driven home for me when we were coming out of Techstars and things weren't going well. You know, RSA was not calling us back. we were figuring out that the sales cycle was really long. We were figuring out that we really didn't have any semblance of product market fit. On that Techstars Boulder demo day, I had $1.5 million committed to a funding round, and I basically managed to make all of that dissolve in about a month. We ended up raising $300K, and we almost shut the company down. And all of my, I send out an email. If you have a company, you should totally do this. Get a group of anyone that will listen to you, anyone that will give you their email address, and just send out a monthly update on the company and be extremely, well, I'll get to what you should do with it in a second. But I've been sending out this monthly update to all of our Techstars mentors and all the people who were interested in, all the people I'd met with, whatever. And to that point, it was always up and to the right, we're killing it. Here's the 3 best things that happened last month. And I got to a point, November of 2013, when our funding round had collapsed, our lead developer had quit for a better job that he believed in more. Our current investors had told us they didn't want to invest anymore. We had about 2 months of runway left. Our other developer, who was now our lead developer, was about to quit. I didn't know that at the time, but good Lord, if I had, who knows what would have happened. And I finally just fuck it, I'm sugarcoating everything. And I sent an email out to all of our mentors, and I was like, here's the real story. Our shit actually does stink right now. And I had more engagement and more help and more stuff offered to us and more hands up from that email than I'd ever had from anything else I'd sent. And I came to the realization that, all of our mentors really wanted to help. Every email I had sent them prior to that basically was saying, everything's going great, we don't need your help. All of a sudden they got an email that was like, holy shit, we really need some help. Here are the problems we're facing. Here's what we think we need to do to address them. And here's how you can help. And it literally was laid out like that. And all of a sudden they're like, oh great, okay, I'll engage. Here's some help. Here's how I can help on that problem. Here's how I can help on that problem. Let me introduce you to this investor. Have you thought about the toy and game space? Here, let me give you $300,000, literally. And it basically just drove home the idea that anytime you're not just being transparent about, first of all, if there are problems and you want help fixing them, you have to be honest with the people who you want help from, otherwise they're not going to help you. It seems pretty obvious in hindsight, but I had never realized that previously. Second, you're never doing yourself any favors by lying about the status of the company. It will always come back to bite you in the ass. A great example, one of our early board meetings, we had 500, I was saying we had 500 people building on the platform, developers building on the platform. We had 490 something, right? Board was like, great, 500, that's an awesome milestone, whatever. 2 weeks later, we actually had our 500th person sign up. And we sent out, on social media, our Twitter feed, we're like, we just crossed our 500th developer. And all of a sudden, one of our investors was like, hey, what the fuck? You told us 2 weeks ago you were 500. I was like, oh, well, we were close. He's like, no, you said 500. Why didn't you say 492, if that's what it was? I'm like, no, well, I was just round, we were close. I'm like, no, that doesn't, that's, and it just came back to bite me in the ass, right? It wasn't huge, but it doesn't do you any favors. If it's 492, say 492. 492s are big numbers still, right? You weren't buying yourself anything by saying 500 when it wasn't there. So, those are the 2 biggest lessons. Moderate towards the mean and be brutally honest about basically everything.
Have you been sued?
Not yet. I actually came brutal honesty, came pretty close this summer. One of our investors basically thought the terms on which he was investing were different, and his recollection of the conversation when I was telling him what the terms were was very different from what the terms actually were and what was memorialized in the document he signed. But had I actually told him something that was different in the document, that's still securities fraud. Surprise. And basically he used that as a lever to get more equity in the company than he deserved. We basically had to make a decision. What is my defense if this investor has more money than even if we're successful, probably has more money than I ever will. he can afford much more expensive lawyers than I can. If he actually sues me for security fraud, what is the case I have to stand on? And what else can I do to absolve this, and giving him the deal he thought he was getting, even though I'm pretty sure I never actually said that to him, was a lot more efficient than risking a lawsuit. So, haven't been sued yet, but knock on wood. Yeah?
Your end users are just regular people, right?
End users are regular people, yeah.
How do they store the stamp? Do you just put it in their pocket?
That's a great question. So, and that's actually one of the things we're working on the most right now. So, this is like this is something that I designed, not an industrial designer. It should never be actually put in the hands of an end user. I've been very lucky that there have been some cool companies that have been willing to do that. But the idea is that we'll actually be mass manufacturing just the bottom portion, not the handle. And we actually have a binding mechanism that we publish to other manufacturers that basically let them make anything they want that this gets integrated into. So for the toy use case, obviously it gets integrated into a toy. You might keep it on a shelf. Kids are actually probably like playing with the toys as figurines in addition to using it to unlock stuff in the game. For Red Bull, we're actually working on a way to integrate the stamp into a backstage pass. So it would just be like a little bit thicker portion of the backstage pass, and you'd touch your pass to your phone, and that would unlock the experience. This is a horrible form factor, and the fact that anybody has been willing to use it is a miracle. But it's worked okay thus far. Thanks for asking that, though. If you look in 10 days at SnowShoeStamp.com, you'll see a lot more different forms. We have wrist-mounted form factors. We have stuff that's built into like tags that you can attach to other stuff. Things like that.
3D.
Either one.
3D printing, is it similar as the Autodesk 3D printing that they're focusing on?
We don't actually. Well, actually, no. We do use one piece of Autodesk software. I mean, excuse me. We've built our own software platform that lets us automatically generate the files that go into the 3D printers. So we use Autodesk software for a lot of the file, like the sort of prototyping phase, but then we've custom developed the whole software platform that actually generates the files. And that's because we knew that we're 3D printing today and we need very specific file generation characteristics for that, but we also knew that we're going to do something other than 3D printing tomorrow. And we needed to have the same software platform extended to whatever the manufacturing process happens to be. Does that make sense?
Have you considered the life sciences, pharma, and biotech industries as well?
The answer to that is, well, it depends on your definition of considered. We have a spreadsheet, an internal document of the company that has like 45 or 50 different industry verticals that like us as non-experts in the vertical could be like, I see how we could use it here. Like I always hated having to sign that card on the back of my library book. Let's put these in every library book out there, right? Like, but we're not experts, so that's actually why we're a developer-facing platform. I don't know anything about pharma. My hope would be that either there's some wonderful, amazing international entrepreneur that wants to start a startup in the pharma space and wants to use our technology for it, hint, hint, or that there's some big established company in the pharma space that's trying to solve a very specific problem that crosses the digital to physical divide, and we just happen to be a great technology for that company. So the long answer to that is we've considered it only in so much as we think it's likely that there's applications there. What those applications are, I have no clue. If you have ideas, I would love to talk about them.
Absolutely.
What do you see as being the most potential for the payment space?
That's a great question. So when you think about payments, we do not have enough, use a really technocratic term, but namespace density to really do payments right. Meaning, I can't make enough unique versions of a stamp in a form factor that you would actually like to carry around with you in order to have that be a truly secure way of identifying the endpoint that a payment is supposed to go to or come from. We are a great portion of a multi-factor auth payment system, right? So if you add us to a PIN code or a biometric or something like that, all of a sudden we can do a whole bunch of interesting things. A good example is there's one startup that's using us to seed cryptocurrency wallets. So you have your Bitcoin wallet. Right now, if you want somebody to give you Bitcoin, you might give them a QR code that encodes the wallet address. Instead, we would enable you to give them a physical object like this that might have a code printed on the, like a 4-digit code printed on the back. All of a sudden, we have enough entropy to describe an endpoint for a cryptocurrency wallet, and all of a sudden, all you have to do is give them one of these physical objects. And it's a lot easier to do. All of a sudden, now you can exchange Bitcoin through a web page as opposed to having to download an actual app, native app to your phone. Again, I don't have a PhD in cryptography. I actually don't know that much about the financial payment space. So that's why we don't build out that vertical application. I can tell you of about 3,000, see, I just did it again. Of the 2,900, and I don't actually know how many we've distributed to date, but of those 2,900 something dev kits that we've distributed to date, about 10% are doing something, so 10% of those developers self-identify as being in the payment space. And we've had conversations with some of them about what they're doing, but I'm sure there's a whole bunch of different things that are being used there.
Can you talk a little bit about your team? Do you have any non-developers on your team, and what are their responsibilities?
Yeah, I mean, so I'm a non-developer. My co-founder is actually a non-developer. Sheridan, the other guy on the screen, he's not a developer. It's a very dirty secret for us that when we raised that round over the summer and it was just the three of us, we were probably the only company to have raised $2.5 million from those VCs without a developer on staff. Going back to that point in the fall of 2013 when I managed to royally screw up that $1.5 million funding round, and both of our developers quit in the space of about 3 months. We actually went through a year and a half where we didn't have a developer employed for the company. It was actually very interesting. I would never say that for a technology startup going through a period without a developer employed is a good thing. Having had to go through it, there were some good things that came out of it. One is that we literally were not allowed to build shit. That meant we had to figure out how to sell and how to talk about and how to generate a market for the shit we had already. We were very lucky in that the developers we had employed previously were very good, and we actually had something that could get people excited. It was very buggy, and so we had to deal with that. There were some bugs like the what was that huge SSL vulnerability that was publicized last year? Some people probably don't think. Yeah. Obviously, we had to like outsource somebody to fix that because we didn't know how. But it basically forced us to figure out how to market the product we had before we could market the product that we wanted. And I think our biz dev process has benefited significantly from that. Now that we do have 3 developers working for the company, we know a lot more about our customers. We know a lot more about product market fit. Not that we're 100% there, but we definitely are further along than we would have been had we not gone through that spell. In terms of what we do, I mean, I'm CEO. In my opinion, the job of a startup CEO is many, many things, and it can basically extend to almost any point of the organization, but it has to include at least 3 things. You're responsible for not running out of money. You're responsible for setting long-term product direction, and you're responsible for building the team, hiring, firing, all that kind of stuff. There's a whole bunch of other stuff there. So for me, I actually do a lot of hardware prototyping. I talk to a lot of our customers. I stare at Reddit a lot. That was a joke. Come on, people. It has to include at least those 3 things. My co-founder, Jamie, leads product. So she's product manager. She has final say on what actually gets put out there. We have a VP of Biz Dev who is unfortunately leaving us soon because she is far more focused on consumer-facing products, and we are, as I've been saying over and over and over again, not consumer-facing right now. We hired her because she was a really close friend, but it's just not going to work out. We are actually in the market for a growth person. I hesitate to say growth hacker. I don't like that term, but somebody who can help publicize, run a content marketing campaign around how cool our technology is, get developers interested in it, get agencies interested in it, help people come on and use those tools. And then Sheridan, who is the bald guy in the photo with Mickey, actually works out of Madison, Wisconsin, where we currently have a manufacturing facility, all those 3D printers. He runs those printers and he runs logistics and fulfillment. As we transition to Asian manufacturing, we'll keep our logistics and fulfillment facility there, and he runs that. Lots of non-technical people on our team. Does that answer your question? Yeah.
My name is James. I'm from Taiwan.
Yeah.
Have you considered to develop your business in East Asia? Because people out there are very familiar, are very used to use the stamp as a signature of their property.
Yeah. We've seen that. And if I was really smart, so there's a Japanese word for the signature stamp.
Yeah.
And if we were really smart, we would have called our company that. Because that's exactly what we are, right? We're a digital version. But we're not that smart. And we named the company before we invented this, and we never changed the name, and that was probably stupid. Another mistake that I can say. But so we've distributed hundreds of our dev kits to East Asia. We have some paying clients there, not big yet. Significantly hampered by the fact that we don't speak any of those languages, and so it's very hard for us to provide developer support in anything but English. I mean, so the short way of answering that question is we've considered it, kind of like with biotech stuff. Like we've considered it. Right now, we're focused on what we know, which is how to get people who speak English to use this technology. There are, without a question, huge opportunities that means we're missing. And the hope is that means that there's somebody that comes in who does know that market, who can build a product for that space, but can also speak English, because that's the only way we're going to be able to service them in the near term. As we grow, as we raise money, 3 years from now, we'll hope, if we're doing our job right, we'll probably have a VP of East Asian markets, or one for each individual country, right? And hopefully it's something that takes off. I do know that we've already been spoofed by a company in Korea. So like there's actually a company that's ripped off our idea and is marketing it themselves, and by some measures maybe doing better than we are. At least they sell their stamps for $100 each, whereas we sell ours for $5 each. So I don't know how many they're selling, but good for them. But we can only control the things we control. So we focus on the people we know how to communicate with the team we have. We focus on the opportunities that are in front of us, and as new opportunities come up, your job as a startup CEO is to appraise them relative to the other things you're doing and figure out if they're worth dedicating resources to. At some point in the near future, it'll be worth our while to dedicate resources to East Asia, but it's probably not there yet. Let me answer your question. Yeah.
Techstars.
Yeah.
So there are a few accelerators, incubators that actually have gained so much visibility, and as 500 startups and YC and Techstars are definitely up there. So how did that help you going through Techstars?
So we started our company in Madison, Wisconsin. There are 10, maybe 11 technology startups in the state of Wisconsin that are worth talking about. We had no network, period. Like, we knew nobody. There are some angel investing groups in Wisconsin, and we actually, luckily, had some success raising very early seed money from them. We raised around our first $800K from those angel investors in Wisconsin. They have no clue what they're investing in. They still don't know what we're doing. They just know that, literally they invested because I came out to California on a trip and met with a VC, and that VC was nice to me. And so the investors in Wisconsin are like, well, fuck, he must be hot shit if you can get a pitch with X investor. And so they gave us $500,000, and then that turned into $800,000. and we had a demo that we could show them, and they saw it do things. Literally, I mean, I'm not exaggerating in terms of how savvy these investors are.
Like you said, brutally honest.
Yeah, exactly. And to their credit, the company would not exist today without them. So very appreciative of everything they've done for us. But for us, one of the big things that was hampering us as a company was lack of a network. Lack of people to make introductions to investors, lack of relationships with investors themselves, lack of mentors that could help us figure out how to run a startup. And I mean, it's not like we had an MBA or business training. I mean, I was getting a PhD in atmospheric science. My co-founder was getting a PhD in chemistry. Like, we had no business starting a company, and no clue what we're doing. We still probably have no clue what we're doing. But Techstars, you basically are buying a network. It's kind of like when people go to Harvard Business School. You're not going there actually for the education. The education actually kind of sucks. You're going there because the alumni rule the world. Techstars isn't quite there yet, but in the startup world, incubators like YC certainly, and to a lesser extent, 500 Startups and Techstars certainly have a network of, I mean, there's 480 companies that have gone through Techstars now. That's a list of CEOs that, like, I don't actually have a class ring from Techstars, but like it's kind of like the same thing, right? Like, you meet somebody at a conference, like, oh, you're Techstars, oh, so am I. And like all of a sudden you're buying each other lunch, right? Just because you have that commonality. That's been huge for us. The other, I mean, you also get direct mentorship from your Techstars mentors, and Boulder for us, that mentorship was far, in hindsight, was not as good as it was with Disney Accelerator. I think that's partially due to, frankly, us, more so than maybe the accelerator itself, but like we're far more mature. I mean, it's kind of like you'd be better at second grade going through it the second time than you were the first, right? Like, oftentimes you don't get that opportunity. If you do get the opportunity to repeat second grade, you really fuck up the first time. That's kind of like where we were going through the second time. We were far better at it the second time, and it was far more effective for us. But the number one first order indicator of the quality of an accelerator is the network. And for us, coming from Wisconsin, it was critical. We wouldn't have raised money. We wouldn't have known any of those investors that were on that slide. I mean, Foundry Group, who led that funding round, we met Brad Feld directly through Techstars. Never would have had him invest had we not gone through. Did that answer your question?
Absolutely. Another question. So, you won the TechCrunch Disrupt Envoy Hackathon, right?
It was actually the TechCrunch Disrupt San Francisco Hackathon.
Oh, it's not the New York one.
Yeah, it was San Francisco.
Okay.
It was back in 2012. Tells you how long we've been doing this. It was one of our first trips out. We were still located in Wisconsin. We were still living in Wisconsin. I had a few meetings out in San Francisco, and we knew it was the week of TechCrunch Disrupt. And so we went to the hackathon, and we glued a stamp to the outside of a locked door, literally super glued it. And then in 24 hours of the hackathon, we built a Wi-Fi actuated door lock. Who's heard of Lockatron or August locks? Any of those things? Okay, so this is a lock that sits on your Wi-Fi and literally like attaches to the back of the deadbolt handle and can lock or unlock your door when it gets hit with a webhook. And so we built this piece of hardware at the hackathon. We used the stamp as the authentication protocol. So basically, how do you prove that this smartphone owner who has permission to unlock the door is actually standing in front of the door before the door unlocks? Touches the phone screen, door to unlock. Won $5,000. And it was great. It was very cool. If anybody's seen Silicon Valley, the show on HBO, it is exactly like that being on stage at TechCrunch Disrupt. 100% exactly like that. There is no fiction about what they show whatsoever. I'm serious. It was scary. It was like a flashback. Yeah.
One more question.
Sure.
The name.
Had to go there. So again, going back to, we started a company to sell loyalty apps to grocery stores. I actually didn't tell you the entire story. We started the company as part of a business plan competition for students at the University of Wisconsin and for business plans that would address climate change. So how do you make money while solving global environmental problems? This was back in 2010 when green tech was still a thing, right? And so we came up with the idea of a smartphone app that you'd use at the grocery store. You could scan the barcode on food products, and it would tell you how environmentally friendly or unfriendly, how carbon intensive the food product was to manufacture. We won the $50,000. That was great. And the inception of the name is that we were trying to minimize your carbon footprint. Snowshoes decrease the depth of your footprint, make it easier to get where you want to go. And we thought we were really clever. And we just never, I mean, theoretically we should have changed the name like 5 times as we went through all of our different business model ideations. Trying to sell a technology product as Snowshoe was probably not the easiest thing. We should have probably been like SnowShoe Stamp or something like that. But I'm not great at branding, and it never seemed like the first order problem we were facing, so we had to change it.
I think it's a great name. How many of you think it's a great name?
I do. Right? I like it. It's fun. It's like kid.
Yeah.
It's funny. The one time it has worked well for us is when we were still located in Wisconsin, but we were pitching investors out here. It was really easy for them to remember which company came from the really, really cold place with snow in our name. It's the only time I think it's really done anything for us. But it's good. Thank you for saying you like it. That's good feedback. It's not changing anytime soon because it was too busy. So.
Good. I'm good. Well, thanks a lot, folks. So, thank you guys. You said you're from Japan, right?
Yeah.
I was just wondering because you were saying...
we do have that stamp, yeah.
Do you know what it's called?
Yeah. We have that characters, Chinese characters.
Yeah.
We need to stamp it and we need to like make it red.
Yeah. Do you know what the name of the stamp is? There's a name for it.
It's Japanese. So I don't know the English name. But
No, but what's the Japanese name?
It's called a chop.
A chop?
Yeah.
Okay. We should have called ourselves.
It's used all over Asia.
We should have called ourselves a chop.
Well, in English it's called a chop. Not Chinese or Japanese.
Oh, okay. Do you know what the Japanese name is?
A Japanese name is Inka.
Inca. We should have been Inca.co or something.
We can still do that.
We could, but I'm too lazy.
I think it's a good market, really.
Yeah, no, I mean, definitely. I mean, it's just a matter of, again, as a startup, we have very limited bandwidth to actually do things. So we'll focus on it at some point, but it's a question of getting to the point where we have the bandwidth to actually do that.
Yeah. Language.
Yeah, language barrier is huge.
Another thing is, like you said, it's so easy to just mimic the idea, like in Korea and Japan, like the Korean company just mimic the idea. I mean,
But they don't do exactly what you do.
No, they literally do exactly what we do.
They do?
Yeah.
So you have a...
They don't make them, their hardware is not as nice.
Oh, okay.
It doesn't look as good. It costs a lot more for them to make them. They don't know how to do 3D printing and stuff like that.
But they get the idea.
Well, I mean, maybe they came up with it independently. It's entirely possible.
We've been doing this for 5 years.
And who knows? They could have come up, I mean, not to badmouth them, like they could have come up with it independently. It's not that original.
So that leads to the next question about patents.
Yeah, we have 8 pending patent applications, ranging from everything from the basic idea of a touchscreen signet all the way through to individual protection for specific use cases. That's counterbalanced by the fact that all of our library clients are open source. So we actually want you to copy those things, but we do have theoretically a lot of protection for the basic concept and the technology itself, and individual vertical use cases. The challenge is that it costs about $1 million to sue somebody for patent infringement. We've raised about $3.5 million to date. So I don't have a winner. Was that? Yeah, I mean, especially international, right? And our patents haven't issued yet. U.S. Patent Office takes forever. That's a good question for my patent attorney. So that's actually an easy way for me to say I don't worry about patents, right? Like, they could be a significant portion of how we're valued in a potential exit, whether we IPO or get acquired. Their value comes in there. certainly a lot of big companies like Disney would never have invested if we didn't have patents, because that's just the way big companies think. But I don't have the resources to use them offensively. They might be valuable defensively. So if Mattel has done something like this before and wants to sue us for patent infringement on something they filed previously, I can point and say, no, our patent issued, we did it first, right? So there's that benefit. But largely speaking, other than that, it's something we spent $50,000 to $80,000 on so far, and don't expect any return from that investment until we have an exit. We needed them, but they're not really. I mean, it's kind of like extortion. There's not a whole lot of functional value to it for the company relative to what I could have spent. I mean, I could have hired a developer for $80,000. An extra developer would have done a lot more for us than 8 pending patent applications.
But it has a potential.
Maybe. We don't know. People keep telling us we need to file for them, and our IP attorney keeps sending us bills, so we pay them. But there's not a lot of strategic thought behind it, because it's not something that's. It might help us get from E to F, but it's not going to help us get from A to B. And it only becomes important if we have to get from E to F. Right? So.
Thanks for your speech. It's very good.
Thanks.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I'm Klaus at snow.sh. Feel free to email me, or happy to answer any questions. Or feel free
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. Guys, just one more thing is we often have like an open pitch event, and today it seems like we don't have a lot of startups here who want to pitch, because usually we have about 7, 8. So I asked some of you, but what we do is we open up the stage to if somebody wants to come and pitch their startup actually, and talk to get the feedback from the team. So
Next.
I mean, so you guys are welcome to do that, and but I understand if you guys have to go. But for those who want to hang around and you want to talk about your startups, you're welcome to do that, and then solicit feedback and just interact with the people who are here.